Welcome to the Truth and Fertility podcast. My name is Haley Yeager and I am your host. And today I wanted to share with you my story. This is the story of how I became so passionate about getting women off the pill. So many women are put on the pill for so many reasons, and it just doesn't make sense. So there's a lot of misinformation, not so good information out there about the pill. And so my hope, my passion, my desire is to give you the true information about it so that you can find a better option for you and for your health. And so this is really where my story begins and how I came to find more naturally how to heal my body, how to heal my reproductive system, and eventually have the 3 kids that I have. Praise be to God. So the start of my story really begins when I was 16. I started to notice, okay, I'm having irregular periods, and I've had my period for a few years now, and they're still irregular. And so what happens when a 16-year-old girl goes to her doctor and says that she has irregular periods? Yeah, she gets put on the pill. So I was put on the pill. I didn't know any better, and that's just what you do. And so I was put on the pill, and it made me super moody. And after about 2 months, I was over it. My mom was for sure over it. And so I ended up just getting off the pill, and I didn't really do much else about it. I was just like, okay, I'm just going to have irregular cycles, is what it is. I don't know when to expect my period, but that's okay. It's better than me being moody all the time. So I got off the pill, and like I said, I didn't really do anything more for searching for the reason as to why my periods were still so irregular. But then when I was 18, I was actually in a church youth group talk, and there was a woman that was talking about this thing called natural family planning, and she was talking about just what it is, and my church's teaching on it. And she was also mentioning how, okay, first of all, just to back up for a second, so natural family planning, NFP, that's something I'm going to be talking about a lot on this podcast. And so to just give you a very quick idea of what that is, if you don't know. So basically, it is a natural way, obviously by its name, it is a natural way that couples can plan their families. And so what the woman does is she tracks different signs or biomarkers that her body gives to determine when she is fertile and when she is not. Because a woman is not always going to be fertile all the time. That's just not how she's biologically made. And so the couple will track her fertility so that they can either, if they want to achieve a pregnancy, they can focus intercourse during the fertile window. But if they wanted to avoid a pregnancy, then they would abstain from intercourse during the fertile window. So that's just kind of NFP in a nutshell, and what it is. So anyways, so church talk, we were learning about what it is, and my church is teaching on it. But then the woman who was giving the talk said something really interesting, and that NFP not only is to plan families, but it can also help for women that are struggling with reproductive issues or disorders or whatever it is. And my ears perked up because I was like, oh, okay, well, I have irregular cycles, and irregular probably means that there's something wrong. And so I was just like, oh, okay. It piqued my interest. And so I pulled her aside after the talk, and I was like, hey, what is this whole thing about charting your cycle for the sake of, medicine or health reasons and not just for family planning? And so she kind of told me all the info, and then she gave me the info for an OBGYN clinic that is in my area that actually specializes in something called naprotechnology. And I'll probably do a whole other podcast episode on naprotechnology, because there's so much that goes into it as well. But it's short for natural procreative technology. And basically what the doctors at this special OBGYN clinic do is they do not prescribe birth control. They do not prescribe the pill for any, medical reasons, or let alone for family planning either. But she gave me the info for that clinic, and she said, go here, you'll learn how to chart your cycle, and we can figure out, or they can help you figure out what's going on. And so, and mind you, I'm 18 years old. I am not married. I'm not planning on having kids anytime soon. And so this was really just for the purpose of figuring out, is there something going on with these irregular periods and irregular cycles that I'm having? So before I went to that clinic, I ended up just going back to my regular doctor, that like my regular practitioner, to just see what she had to say if I didn't want the pill. And so I went to my regular doctor first and I said, hey, I'm still having these irregular cycles, but this time I don't want the pill. I want to try something else. And she was really kind about it, but she said, well, why don't you want the pill, if you don't mind me asking? And I said, well, and this is as much as I knew at this point. I said, well, I know I am not ovulating, or I'm not ovulating regularly, right? Because if you don't have a period regularly, that most likely means that you are not ovulating regularly. And so I said, well, I know I'm not ovulating, and the pill isn't going to help me ovulate. The pill is actually going to suppress ovulation. That's the first thing that it does. And so I said, I want something that's going to help me ovulate. And I remember her looking at me and she just goes, well, why do you want to ovulate? And my 18-year-old brain just exploded because I'm thinking, okay, you are a smart woman. You went to medical school. You are like, you're not a dumb person, yet it's the same thing as saying, I go in with a broken left arm and you tell me, oh, well, why do you want your left arm fixed? Because you write with your right hand. It's like, really? Why do you want to ovulate? I want to ovulate because that's what a woman's body is supposed to do. That's what a healthy reproductive system is supposed to do. And it's supposed to do it regularly, mind you. So I just kind of was like, okay, this is not a good fit anymore. And so at that point, I ended up going to that clinic that speaker had told me about. And the first thing that the doctor at the clinic told me to do is to start learning how to chart my cycle. So I went through a class to learn how to chart my cycle. And for those of you that are interested in the type of charting method that I used, I was using the Creighton method, for those of you that are interested in that. So I would learn the Creighton method of natural family planning, which is basically looking at, I'm going to say it, cervical mucus. We're going to talk a lot about cervical mucus in this podcast, but it's basically learning how to track your cervical mucus, because your cervical mucus is a direct response to the hormones in your body, your reproductive hormones. And so you can learn a lot about your cycle just based on the cervical mucus that your body is producing. So I learned how to chart that. And by charting my cycle after a few months of doing that and doing a little bit of blood work and an ultrasound, the doctor was able to diagnose me with what is called polycystic ovarian syndrome, which is more commonly known as PCOS. So I had this diagnosis. At this point, I think I'm more so 19, and I'm in college. And I had this diagnosis of PCOS, which, by the way, I would have never had this diagnosis if I just stayed on the pill. Because when I got on the pill, there was no blood work, no ultrasound, no questions asked, just, oh, you have irregular periods, here's the pill. So I would have never gotten that diagnosis. And the diagnosis means that there's something wrong that needs to be healed, right? So I would have never actually been healed from this PCOS had I not actually sought a diagnosis rather than just staying on the pill. So it takes, though, after I got my diagnosis, it took about 2 to 3 years, really, of a journey of figuring out different medications that worked and different diets that worked and all of these things. I mean, it's not a short process, but I will tell you that it is a process that is so, so worth it. And this whole time I'm also charting too, so I can see how the different medications that I got on changed my cycle or changed my hormones, and for better or for worse. And so eventually what I figured out is that a diet change really was key for me. Now, some women get on medication for PCOS and they're good to go. Other women like me don't respond as well to medication, and it's really a diet change. And also, I am 19, 20, 21 years old. I'm in college. What college student wants to be told that they have to have a diet change, which obviously means that she's going to have to be eating healthier? Because I was totally fine with the food court chips and mac and cheese. I don't know. I was not eating super well. So, but eventually I was like, okay, all right. I need to change my diet. I need to eat better. So that's what I did. And that's when I really saw results. I started to see myself ovulating, which you can see on a chart. I started to see ovulation happening, and I started to see my period coming more regularly. And also at this time, I met the man who would be my spouse. So I met my husband when I was 20, and we got married when I was 21. So, this whole journey took place right before I met my husband. And again, it was a 2 to 3 year journey of figuring out from diagnosis to figuring out, what is going to help me actually get my reproductive system healthy again. So it's not a short process, but the reason that I emphasize that is because, I got married at 21 and we did want to have kids right away. And it took about 7 months of trying, but we were able to conceive our first son and then 2 daughters after that. And I will tell you, hands down, that I would not have the children that I have today if I had not gone through that process of healing as a single woman. My husband and I would have had a story of infertility had I not gone through that process as a single woman. And so this is really where my passion, I'm just like getting riled up talking about it right now, because this is where my passion comes from. So many women are put on the pill at 16 and then they stay on it for 10 years and then they get married and then they want to have kids and they can't, and they're wondering why. It's because your ovaries haven't worked in the way that they should for the last 10 years. And you probably got on that medication or that pill because there was something going on that you were just now figuring out rather than having it dealt with and healed way back then. It's such an injustice to women that this is happening over and over and over again. And as an NFP instructor now, I see this happening over and over and over again. And I want more for women. I want more for you. If you're listening to this and you have irregular cycles, you have painful periods where you have to call out of work or school just because you need to lay on your bed and curled up in a ball, that is not supposed to be the way that it is. And I want better for you. I want something that is going to actually treat you and heal you and get to the root of what is causing that pain or those irregular cycles, or even something just as simple as or maybe not simple. Acne isn't simple always, but just these are all things that are hormone based. And so if we are just trying to put a Band-Aid on these things with the pill, we're not getting to the root cause of what is going on. We're not getting to true healing. And that is what I want for you. And so shortly after that whole scenario, I became an NFP instructor because I wanted to teach women how to chart their cycles. Yes, for the sake of family planning, absolutely. But then also because I want there to be true women's health. I want there to be a better solution for these women that are experiencing, these types of reproductive problems, infertility as well, PCOS, endometriosis, whatever it is. The pill is not going to fix it. We need to have better care, better care than just what hormonal contraception or the pill can offer. And so, funny enough, the story kind of ends in a full circle because I now work at that same OBGYN clinic that I went to when I was 18 and was diagnosed with PCOS. And I work at that clinic now teaching women and couples how to chart their cycles so they can either achieve or avoid pregnancy. So for family planning purposes, but also for the sake of their reproductive health. And so many women that come into the clinic are looking for help reproductively, whether it is, those painful periods or irregular cycles, or if they're struggling with infertility, things like that. And so it is just so beautiful to see how, the Lord has just orchestrated this story of mine so beautifully to come full circle like that. And now I can give back and help and start this podcast. And so that is, I am going to get off of my soapbox now. And that is my story. And I now have, as you can probably hear throughout this whole recording, I'm so sorry, but my newest baby girl, who is almost 3 months old, she's been just kind of squirming in my arms. So that's who that is, if you hear that background noise. But again, I would not have these kiddos if it wasn't for that journey, if it wasn't for NFP, charting my cycle, learning I had PCOS, and finding true healing of that. So if this sounds anything like you, or this resonates at all, I also offer Creighton instruction virtually. And so you can go to my own website at truthandfertility.com, and you can sign up there for a free 20-minute discovery call. So I can give you all of the details of what the process entails, everything that's involved in that, and we can see if we are a good fit. So again, that's truthandfertility.com. And if you have any other questions, you can also email me at Haley, that's spelled Haley, Haley at truthandfertility.com. Thank you so much for staying tuned to this podcast, and I hope something resonated with you here, and I will talk to you again next week.